I'm currently sitting in my RV outside a cafe with free internet access, typing out these thoughts that have been swirling around in my head. Writing them down might help me organize and make sense of everything. It's been almost 6 months since I left my family, just over a week after discovering my wife's affair. I stumbled upon it by chance, completely unaware. I thought we had a solid marriage, plenty of intimacy, long conversations, regular date nights, shared hobbies, and individual interests. We were healthy and in good shape. Or maybe that's just how I perceived it. My wife, whom I'll refer to as Eve, cheated on me, indicating she preferred someone else over me. If she could betray me like that, did she ever truly love me? I thought she was my best friend, but I guess not. Looking back, I realize I might have been seeing things through rose-tinted glasses. I genuinely believed my family cared about me and that I was loved. I was clearly mistaken. The revelation came when I returned home late from a mandatory safety training seminar. Eve was asleep on the sofa, and a message with emojis similar to ones I'd use when messaging her popped up on her phone. I couldn't resist snooping and discovered what had been going on for at least 5 months. I knew the other man, whom I'll call Adam. He was a colleague of hers at work. I'd even attended a barbecue at his house and met his family, including his youngest child, who was just 2 years old. As I read through their messages, something inside me snapped. My feelings for Eve shifted from love to hatred to a numb emptiness, not just towards her, but towards everything. Completely numb, I snapped pictures of the messages and crawled into bed, unable to sleep, just staring blankly at the ceiling. The next day, Eve was upset that I hadn't woken her up before going to bed. She complained about a stiff neck from sleeping on the couch all night, but I wasn't really listening. Everything felt muted, as if the world's volume had been turned down. Surprisingly, I felt little to no anger, which seemed odd. During breakfast, I remained silent while my wife and daughter chatted away, seemingly oblivious to any change in me. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, going through the motions of daily life but unable to connect with my usual self. I continued with my routine, going to work and carrying out tasks, but I stopped speaking much. Strangely, nobody seemed to notice or care. It became clear to me that Eve and my daughter didn't truly care about me. They interacted with me only when they needed something. I experienced waves of pain that would come and go, sometimes overwhelming me entirely. It was evident that I wasn't okay. For 5 days, I moved through life in this detached state. It wasn't until dinner one evening when Eve finally asked if something was wrong. In my silence, I made a vague gesture indicating uncertainty, and she seemed to accept that without further inquiry. The following day, I decided not to go to work at the local power company, where I typically handle power line repairs. Instead, I gathered some random belongings along with my camping and hunting gear, without a clear plan in mind. I loaded everything into my car and wandered around the neighborhood for a while before eventually ending up at the kitchen table, waiting for my wife to return home. When she arrived with groceries, she immediately launched into talking about her day while unpacking the bags, barely acknowledging my presence apart from a passing glance as she entered the kitchen. Our daughter also appeared briefly, engaging in similar mundane chatter while facing away from me. Feeling deeply rejected, unappreciated, and utterly alone, I couldn't shake the sense of invisibility and insignificance that overwhelmed me. Reflecting on our life together, I realized that they didn't truly care about me. I was merely a peripheral figure in their lives, a convenient accessory rather than a valued individual. Overcome with emotion, I couldn't contain my tears, but even then, they remained oblivious to my distress. In a sudden surge of anger and frustration, I grabbed the glass of water in front of me and hurled it forcefully against the tiles above the sink, shattering it into pieces that scattered across the room. Startled and alarmed by my outburst, both my wife and daughter turned to face me, their expressions reflecting a mix of shock and confusion. Amidst the tense silence that followed, I found the strength to confront my wife about her affair with Adam. Despite the tightness in my jaw from clenching it so hard, my words came out with surprising clarity. My daughter, taken aback by the revelation, turned to her mother for an explanation, while Eve, caught off guard, stammered out an apology before attempting to justify her actions. The ensuing argument between them left me feeling even more isolated and betrayed. Once again, it felt like I was completely invisible to them. I mean, seriously, I just threw a glass. Yet there I was, watching them argue without even acknowledging my presence. After a few minutes of witnessing their escalating confrontation, I simply walked out, got into my car, and glanced back at them through the window, still engrossed in their heated exchange. They didn't even realize I had left. I sat there for a few more minutes before giving up and driving off. About 15 minutes later, Eve began trying to call me incessantly, followed by a deluge of texts from both her and our daughter. I chose to ignore them and eventually turned off my phone. The following day, I withdrew half of our money and contacted my boss to inform him that I didn't know when I would be returning to work. He warned me that failure to show up meant termination, to which I simply responded with an indifferent okay before hanging up. I ended up at Adam's house, where his wife answered the door. I handed her a copy of the messages and revealed the affair between Adam and my wife before leaving her in tears on the stairs. By the end of the day, I found myself in a cheap hotel on the outskirts of town. The next few days were a blur as I struggled to process everything, making little progress and mostly staring at the wall while grappling with thoughts of ending my own life. Then, on the third or fourth day, I can't be certain, Eve's older brother, whom we'll call Bob, unexpectedly showed up. I had no idea how he had managed to find me. He attempted to question me, but I remained silent. In response to my lack of cooperation, he handcuffed me, but instead of taking me to the police station as I had anticipated, he brought me back home. Bob forcefully led me into the living room, where my wife and daughter immediately launched into a barrage of accusations and complaints against me. Despite their verbal assault, I remained silent, simply absorbing their words with a mix of disbelief and detachment. Their tirade continued, with Eve eventually demanding that I speak up. After a prolonged moment of silence, I calmly uttered, "I have nothing to say to you, Eve, you deceitful woman." Bob, incensed by my response, grabbed me and slammed me against the wall, admonishing me for speaking to his sister in such a manner. Strangely, I found a twisted sense of satisfaction in Bob's violent outburst, which elicited laughter from me for reasons I couldn't quite comprehend. I seized the opportunities to taunt Bob about his failed marriage, mocking him for driving his wife away. This provoked another physical altercation, resulting in me being knocked to the ground amid the chaos of my wife and daughter's frantic screams. Despite the blows and the sight of my own blood on the floor, I couldn't stifle my laughter, perhaps finding amusement in the absurdity of the situation. As I struggled to regain consciousness, I found myself in a hospital bed, plagued by nausea indicative of a concussion. My wife, Bob, and my daughter hovered nearby, their words blending together in my disoriented state. A nurse intervened, ushering them out of the room as I emptied the contents of my stomach onto the floor. During a brief moment of clarity, I instructed the nurse to ensure that my family stayed away from me, warning that I would flee if they returned. Despite her stern insistence that movement was ill-advised, I remained resolute in my decision. The absence of my family in the hospital brought a fleeting sense of relief, allowing me a rare moment of peace to collect my thoughts amidst the chaos of my ordeal. I contemplated reporting Bob for his actions, but I knew it would likely be futile in a small town where his colleagues might protect him. Confronting my wife seemed equally fruitless. Instead, I chose to vanish, to become a ghost, cutting all ties with these people for good. I penned letters to each of them, a warning to Bob about the consequences of any future interference, an explanation to my daughter about Eve's betrayal and my decision to distance myself from them as her father, and a practical message to Eve, outlining my intention to sever all financial and emotional ties, emphasizing the impossibility of reconciliation after her brother's violent intervention. I made it clear that I wouldn't lift a finger for her, leaving her to handle the divorce proceedings if she wished. I expressed my determination to disappear completely, warning that any attempt to intrude on my newfound solitude would have dire consequences. I closed with a painful acknowledgement of the deep hurt she had caused me, a decision I later regretted as it felt like conceding to her power to inflict more pain. While in the hospital, I devised a plan to vanish, aided by the fresh clothes Eve provided through the hospital. One evening, without a word to anyone, I slipped out through the rear fire escape, disappearing into the night, leaving behind a life that had become unbearable. I accidentally triggered an alarm during my escape, causing a moment of panic, but fortunately, I managed to slip away unnoticed. Returning to the hotel to retrieve my car, I exchanged it for a small RV and hit the road. With a new phone in hand, I reached out to only one person, my father. I disclosed everything to him, stressing that my new number was to remain private, except for essential matters like signing documents. Beyond that, I desired complete solitude. In the initial months, I grappled with the loss of my former life, realizing it was built on a facade, a figment of my imagination. The loving family, friends, they were all illusions. It became evident that these individuals never truly cared for me. Gradually, I started to reconstruct my existence, embracing a solitary lifestyle. Disengaging from society entirely, I adopted a ghost-like existence. I reside under the radar, using a P.O. box and a safety deposit box for valuables and cash. Engaging in odd jobs for sustenance, I evade taxes and eschew traditional banking. When strangers inquire about my identity, I go by the alias Fred, distancing myself from societal expectations. Embracing my anonymity, I find solace in brewing beer, immersing myself in nature, and maintaining peak physical fitness. With a few like-minded friends for company during hunting and fishing expeditions, I relish the freedom of living on my terms. In essence, my life has improved significantly. No longer subjected to exploitation under the guise of affection, I revel in the autonomy and authenticity of my newfound existence. I have no idea about the whereabouts or status of my wife, daughter, old friends, or the rest of my family. Divorce, child support, the house, none of it concerns me. My father attempts to relay information occasionally, but I swiftly shut down any attempt at reconnecting with my old life. Feeling liberated, at ease, and content, I dare say even happy. Possessions are sparse, but my needs are minimal. Eventually, I plan to liquidate everything and dispose of the remaining funds, erasing any trace of my existence. Then, I will vanish into a national park, never to be found. Occasionally, I visit shopping malls, train stations, or bus terminals, observing people. I witness men trapped in the same cycle I once endured, sacrificing themselves for families and a society that scarcely acknowledges their efforts. They're pressured to pursue material wealth and societal validation, yet receive no gratitude or appreciation in return. These men, like I once was, wear a facade of denial, refusing to acknowledge the grim reality. Yet, I see through their hollow gazes, I recognize the emptiness they conceal. It's a relief to express these thoughts, and I appreciate your willingness to listen. Story 2. Around 6:30 p.m., I arrived at our ancestral two-story house, a property that had been in my family for 4 generations. It had been a productive day on the farm, and I was eager for a comforting home-cooked meal and a peaceful evening with Terry, my wife of 20 years. As I relaxed from the day's work, I reflected on the blessings of my life. Farming was demanding, but the joys it brought outweighed the challenges. And Terry, she was a gem of a wife. Warm, affectionate, and always there for me. Sure, like everyone, she had her quirks and moments of absent-mindedness, but she was my partner, my steadfast support, and I cherished her deeply. Upon entering, the aroma of freshly baked meatloaf greeted me, signaling a culinary delight awaiting me. Terry's culinary skills were exceptional, turning even the simplest dishes into gourmet treats. Sorting through the mail by the door, mostly junk and bills addressed to us, I headed to the kitchen where Terry was taking the meatloaf out of the oven. After assisting her, I freshened up in the bathroom before returning to find dinner served. Terry had prepared a hearty spread, including the aromatic meatloaf infused with mild chili peppers and mushrooms. As I complimented her, she smiled, knowing exactly how to please my palate. We sat down to dinner, and amidst the savory meal, I inquired about her day. It was fine, she replied between bites. We finally closed the deal on the old Jennings property. Terry had joined a local real estate firm a decade ago, seeking to contribute to our family once our twins became independent. Now, with Dan attending the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and Lisa pursuing veterinary studies at the University of Washington, she had more time to focus on her career. Terry and I were financially stable, thanks to her job and the farm's income. We had plans to retire at 60 and possibly embark on a Caribbean cruise, but nothing was set in stone. Lately, however, I noticed Terry becoming more contemplative and somber than usual, and tonight was no exception. "Is everything all right, dear?" I inquired, sensing her unease. "I think we need to talk after dinner," she responded softly. "Sure thing." We can head to the back porch once we're done, I suggested. It was our designated spot for smoking and enjoying drinks, as we had agreed not to smoke indoors. That sounds good, she agreed. After dinner, as I helped tidy up, I couldn't shake the feeling of apprehension about our impending conversation. I fetched us drinks and cigarettes, then joined Terry on the porch. So, what's on your mind? I prompted, trying to sound composed. Bill, promise me you'll hear me out without interruption, she began. I'm torn, and I fear you'll resent me once I've spoken. Please let me finish before reacting, and promise not to get angry. All right, I promise. Go ahead, I assured her. Bill, you know I love you more than anything, right? She started. Of course, Terry. You've been by my side through thick and thin, I affirmed. I've never been with anyone else but you, she continued. And I've only been with you, I confirmed. What's this about, Terry? I've been thinking about having an affair before we turn 40, she confessed. What? I exclaimed, taken aback. You want to be with another man, and you expect me to be okay with it? Yes, that's what I'm saying, she admitted. It's not about you or our relationship changing. I'll still love you just as much. I just want to experience something different before it's too late. So, I'm not enough for you? I questioned, feeling hurt. It's not that, Bill. You're wonderful. I just want to know what else is out there, she explained. It's like driving the same car your whole life and wondering what it's like to drive something different. It doesn't have to change anything between us. I really don't like the comparison, I stated firmly. And this has already changed things between us. I guess I didn't phrase it right, Terry admitted. Please don't take it the wrong way. So, have you gone through with it? I inquired. No, I haven't, she replied. Have you picked someone? I pressed. No, not yet. It's just been on my mind, she explained. You didn't come up with this idea on your own. Who planted it? I probed, struggling to stay composed. I needed to understand and make Terry see reason. It was Marie Cunningham from work. We grab lunch sometimes, and she suggested it as a way for me to find validation. She also said if you truly loved me, you'd allow it with your consent, Terry revealed. Marie Cunningham? The brunette, around 5 feet tall, dresses younger than her age? I confirmed. Yes, that's her. Do you know her? Terry asked. I've met her a few times at your office, but I don't know her well. However, rumors suggest she's been through multiple divorces and has a history of getting too close to other men, I disclosed. I had no idea, Terry admitted, taken aback. Let's talk about us. We've known each other for over 30 years, been together since high school. Have you ever known me to accept something like this? I questioned. No, never, Terry admitted. So why now? What would you do if I asked to be with another woman for validation? I challenged. I'd never allow it, Terry responded. Exactly. So why should it be different for you? I prompted, hoping she'd see the gravity of her decision. Oh my God, I hadn't thought of it like that, Terry realized, shocked. Do you remember my grandparents? I asked her. They passed away in 2001, a few years after celebrating their 80th wedding anniversary, both well into their 100s and well known in the community. In 1999, we threw a huge party for them at the assisted living facility they called home. Yeah, I remember, she replied. Do you recall their 80th anniversary celebration? I inquired. That's when we were discussing our own future together, remember? I do, she said, smiling. I've shared this story with you before, but I want to remind you, I said. I asked Grandpa once about the secret to their long marriage. He told me a story I'll never forget. It was right after World War I when they got married in 1919, and folks still used horse and buggies around here. Grandpa told me that after their wedding, they set off in the buggy. A few miles down the road, the horse stumbled and fell. That's one, Grandpa said as he got the horse back up. They continued, but the horse fell again a couple of miles later. That's two, Grandpa noted. Once more, as they neared home, the horse fell. That's three, Grandpa declared, then got out, fetched his rifle, and shot the horse dead, right here in the driveway, I gestured. Grandma wasn't pleased and voiced her discontent. But Grandpa just smiled and said, that's one. I never heard them argue in all the years I knew them, I recounted, glancing at Terry, who appeared alarmed. Right now, you've got 2 strikes against you, I warned her. One for even considering Marie's advice, and another for thinking I'd agree to this idea of yours. Although you haven't acted on it, some might say I should leave you out there like Grandpa did with the horse. Are you saying you'd actually harm me? Terry asked, shocked. No, but the thought might cross my mind, I admitted. Truth is, despite your occasional naivety, I still care about you deeply, and we've shared many years together. Do you really think I'm naive? She asked, her voice barely audible. Remember that incident with the sandwich? I chuckled. You once made me a sandwich with just 2 slices of bread, no filling whatsoever. Terry's face lit up with a sheepish grin. Oh, come on, you're not still teasing me about that, are you? I might never let you live it down, I teased back. So, what's our next move? Terry asked, getting serious. It's your call, I replied. You're resourceful. You've raised 2 great kids. You'll figure it out. But just so we're clear, I won't tolerate being disrespected or turned into a cuckold. Picture it like this, bottom of the 9th, 2 strikes against you. Where we go from here is up to you. Now, excuse me, I've got an early start tomorrow. I'm off to bed. With that, I snuffed out my cigarette and headed upstairs. Epilogue, 3 months later. Stopping the combine, I hopped out and made my way to my pickup for lunch. It wasn't until I climbed inside that I realized I'd left my lunch at home. Great, now I'll have to waste time going back, I muttered to myself, scanning the horizon. Suddenly, I spotted a cloud of dust approaching. It was Terry's SUV. She pulled up beside my truck, and as she stepped out, I couldn't help but notice her in those cut-off jean shorts. After all these years, she still looked incredible. Hey there, cowboy, she greeted me with a grin. You forgot your lunch, so I brought it out to you. Thanks a bunch, I replied, grateful. I was just about to head back. Mind if I join you? She asked. Not at all, I said, gesturing for her to hop in. We settled into the back of her SUV where she had prepared a picnic lunch. As we ate, I reflected on the past 3 months. Following our heart-to-heart, Terry told Marie to shove her idea. Shortly after, Marie's husband caught her in the act with another man and promptly filed for divorce. The day after our talk, Terry showered me with apologies, affection, a lavish meal, and ultimately, a passionate night that reignited our connection in ways I hadn't imagined. I understand that some people might think I should have ended things with Terry for even considering Marie's suggestions. But the truth is, I couldn't just switch off over 20 years of love like that. Maybe it would have been different if Terry had acted on her thoughts, but she didn't. Honestly, I couldn't care less about other people's opinions. It's my life and my marriage, and I know I'd be miserable without her. It'd be like losing a part of myself. Terry continued working at the real estate company for a couple of months, making some impressive commissions from property sales. After assessing our finances, she realized we had enough to retire comfortably if we wanted to. So, she decided to quit her job and become a stay-at-home wife. Sometimes, she even joined me in the fields during the day. I enjoyed having her around. After our meal, she surprised me with a can of whipped cream. Here's our dessert, she said with a mischievous grin. I glanced into the basket but didn't see any traditional dessert. What's for dessert? I asked, puzzled. In response, she removed her short t-shirt, revealing her bare breasts, then slipped off her shorts and panties, exposing her freshly shaven area. She leaned back, spreading her legs and offering herself to me. This, she said, parting her lower lips with her fingers. If you want it. Well, hot damn, I chuckled, unable to contain my excitement. I always knew you were the best cook in the county. You just hit a home run with that. Now, pass me that can of whipped cream. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.